The American people overwhelmingly support, the polls show that they support assault weapons bans. It shows that they support universal background checks. Well, that's not true either. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about yet another attempt by our Democratic lawmakers to shove an assault weapons ban down our collective American throats. Before we get started, please subscribe to this channel for your firearms and self-defense legal updates. And speaking of theft of our freedoms, let's talk about identity theft. Identity theft isn't cheap. In 2022, the U.S. FTC reported that Americans lost $8.8 billion to identity theft and fraud, a 49% increase from 2021. But you can protect yourself now for a fraction of the cost. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. I just tried it out for myself. I just Googled my own phone number, and sure enough, I found my city of residence, despite the fact that, like Richard's sister you've heard him talk about before, I am a former prosecutor and my address and all my information is hidden by law.
Came up?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Married and or maiden names for Emily Taylor in Texas.
Oh, no.
That is terrifying, but that's where Aura comes in.
Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need, all inside one app. Aura's app features a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. And on top of data breach notifications, Aura proactively identifies data brokers exposing your information on the web and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt out of junk mail and telemarketing lists.
Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with our link. Go to aura.com/armedattorneys to start your free trial. Also linked below in the description or scan the QR code. Thanks, Aura. Edwin Walker, assault weapons bans. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, I'm sure that, some folks maybe pay attention to the news. As I've mentioned before, I love watching congressional hearings. And there's...
It's true, he does.
Yes, and there's some people may not be aware that a lot of times whenever certain senators want to sneak things through, they'll ask for what they call unanimous consent. And unanimous consent is whenever they go to the floor, they put forward their proposition and they move that by unanimous consent that it be adopted. Well, yesterday it was very important because Chuck Schumer of New York and Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
Oh, that's right.
Attempted to pass by unanimous consent 2 of the major pieces of gun control legislation. Number 1, the quote unquote assault weapons ban, which we've spoken to numerous times. Number 2, they tried to pass what basically is a usurpation of state law, under the principles of federalism, an area with state law controls, and that is the regulation of intrastate commerce by passing what they, again, misnomer as the universal background check.
My favorite, I saw, I was looking into this to see what the coverage was like. And my favorite kind of media twist of the coverage was this article I read from a very liberal outlet, because I was just looking to see what comes up, that was like, Senate Republicans don't even have to take things to a vote anymore to vote down gun control. It was like Senate Republicans had nothing to do with how this was brought to the floor. I mean, it just was, but that is, I mean, there is nothing that a Republican voting against gun control can do right in the eyes of the media.
No, and that is actually incredibly deceptive because number 1, it's the individual who asks for unanimous consent is the one that's seeking to do things without a vote.
Yes.
They're the ones that are seeking to do things without a vote. For those of you who don't know how it works, they just simply make a motion. I move that Senate bill or House resolution or whatever it may be adopted by unanimous consent. And then if one person objects, then it cannot go forward. But there has to be a person there and they have to object. Otherwise, under the rules of the Senate, it could be adopted and thereby pass the Senate without a vote, without debate. And that's the real crime, is that we should, as citizens, we should speak up against anything being adopted by unanimous consent. I mean, outside of pass a resolution that the Senate recognized today as Eat More Popcorn Day or something silly like that. Anything that's substantive legislation should absolutely
put
be
to a vote.
debated and put to a vote. Nothing legislative should be adopted by unanimous consent whenever it is a substantive bill.
For those of you who are wondering, what exactly was the content of the newest assault weapons ban that was proposed in the last several days, it's exactly what we've seen. It's exactly what was proposed in the House most recently. It is the exact same bill we have seen for 2022 for any of the most recent assault weapons bans. What Dianne Feinstein in the Senate was trying to propose last session, it is your AR-15 platform, your modern sporting rifle platforms are essentially all gone because they contain a number of features in addition to a pistol grip and a detachable magazine, correct?
Yes, being a magazine-fed semi-automatic weapon, which is going to be almost every single one of your semi-automatic rifles and over half of your semi-automatic handguns.
And, of course, reasonings being, it's in the 20 years since the assault weapons ban has expired, we've had an explosion in mass shootings. First of all, causation isn't correlation, right?
Well, that is correct. And I don't know that there's been an explosion of mass shootings. There's certainly been an explosion in what the anti-gun folks want to define as a mass shooting.
There's been an explosion in definition.
In definitions, yes. And, that's one of the more ridiculous things. You would think that the fact that this legislation did expire 20 years ago, what they call the original assault weapons ban of 1994, that it did expire 20 years ago and we have not had another one, pretty much shows that, maybe the American public doesn't need this.
Nothing says will of the people like trying it every year for 20 years and it not happening.
Yes.
Right? Seems like the will of the people is that it shouldn't happen. And yet, on the floor, and I think it was Chris Murphy, who was like, the American people overwhelmingly support, the polls show that they support assault weapons bans. It shows that they support universal background checks. Well, that's not true either, because the polling questions are misleading. And generally, it's like, do you support background checks for the purchase of firearms? And most Americans will say, sure, like you have right now. You walk into a gun store, if you're a convicted felon or a number of other things on your background check, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you are not going to be able to walk out with that gun. Most Americans do support that. Most Americans probably support whatever misleading way they're framing the other question too, although I can't say off the top of my head I know what it is.
Yeah, because whenever they're taking these polls, they don't tell the people what the law already is.
Yes.
They just simply throw out this question and say, hey, do you want this? It's like saying, hey, American, do you like pizza? Well, yeah, you throw out some easy question. Yeah. And also
American people say the only food that should be available is pizza.
Yes.
It's like, no, that's not how that works.
Actually, one of my favorite political writers, PJ O'Rourke, he used to have a phrase about that. He's in his answer about whether or not America should be a democracy, which is not, as a republic. And it angers me all the time. Every time I see somebody in the media go, oh, American democracy. We are a republic. We are not a straight democracy.
That's and not an Edwin rant I've heard in a while.
Yes. And PJ O'Rourke said that if we were a straight democracy, then all clothing would be acid wash jeans and all dinners would be pizza. So that's the reason that we are not a democracy. But also with regard to polls, remember, I've never been a poll participant.
No,
have you?
I have not.
So they've never asked me my opinion. They go and they interview 1,000 people, in which there are almost 350 million Americans in the country. But yet they'll go interview 1,000 people in a select geographical area where they know it's already going to be skewed to a particular point of view. And then they'll throw that up and say, American people want it. Why aren't we doing it?
Yes. And if Family Feud has taught us anything, you poll a certain number of individuals and lots of them are kooky.
That's right. 100 people surveyed said that they want the government to run their lives.
There we are.
Here we are. And I just want to say that the media is so complacent in this. It really makes me mad. Nobody in the media, out of all the news stories that's covered, none of them ever gave you the straight story. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people simply still rely on the mainstream media for their news, and they're just being simply misled. And the anti-gun folks in Congress are taking advantage of that.
That's true. So, Edwin Walker. When this was brought by Chuck Schumer and Chris Murphy to the floor of the Senate, What happened? How did the Republicans save us?
Republican senators objected to it, and therefore it could not be passed by unanimous consent. Now, that does not mean that the bill was voted down. That just simply means that it was not adopted by unanimous consent. It still can be debated in committees. It still can have testimony in committees done. It can still be debated on the floor of the Senate, and it can still go to the floor for a Senate vote. So the bill still exists. Just the sneaky way that they attempted to pass it was thwarted by the Republicans.
Bill not dead. First bite at the apple. Done so.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. We appreciate all of our viewers. If you like this content, do subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Should I call for anything else, Jen?
You forgot to tell them to fight the algorithm.
Fight the algorithm.
The only way to allow the algorithm to win is for good men to do nothing. If good men do nothing, the algorithm wins.
True. What if good women do nothing?
Women do nothing.
Edwin Walker, it should be the 1950s again.
I'd prefer it to be the 1970s again, only without Jimmy Carter. So could I have that?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed our content. Again, please subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed us. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.
Why am I a jerk for that?
You immediately put me on. It's not a back scratcher.
I don't need my back scratch, Jen. So let me start.
So
So
with, well, like I said, with,
okay.
okay.
Okay.